December 2022, the year is almost coming to a close, and we have had the best of Morning Cafe, and of course looking forward to wind it up on a very good note. Look at me speaking as though it's already the 31st of December. Karibu sana, arise and shine. Let's take a look at what is happening in the world of news and so much more. Getting into very important conversations. Being a Wednesday, we're going to hit the kitchen. Away from meat being a Wednesday, we are definitely also going to have a very important conversation as to just branding, especially at this point of Christmas. It's Christmas time, and you also want to know how are you going to wrap that gift, how are you going to just brand it and all that. Very, very important as you gift your loved ones, and so we'll be having that conversation later on. But importantly, we do not stop talking as to what is happening in the country, politically, economically, health-wise, just how we're preparing ourselves, education-wise. We're still having our students sitting for the examinations, and we hope that they are managing just well. The papers this morning as well, the Standard newspaper, the People Daily and the Daily Nation. We take a look at those ones as we also pull a recap on the news stories prepared by my team. This is Morning Cafe. It begins right away with me, Lela. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV 47KE across all our social media platforms. We sample this as we continue with the broadcast. The Standard newspaper this morning, the front page, Peace, Uhuru strikes deal with DRC rebels, and this is a story captured on page 4. Remember, he's been out there calling for this moment of peace and just how best DRC can negotiate with M23 to bring that aspect of peace, and therefore, well, they say that, white cloud, so to speak, and so we get to see just how much this peace deal that has been brokered then will hold for purposes of posterity for this East African nation. Away from it, and of course it's in the world of sports, so much still happening on the international scene, or better yet, the global scene, as the world watches the football game or the football action that is ongoing at Qatar. That is the World Cup. Yesterday, Morocco stunned Spain to storm into quarters, and that is a story captured on page 40. The sports edition of the Standard newspaper. The biggest story as to this is Raila's big gamble. As you can evidently see, they say today the opposition chief sets out to pick himself up. That is after the August electoral setback, and as the government scurries to formalize his role, the planned rallies present as many risks as opportunities, and many prove to be another turning point. We'll be looking to see how successful the Right Honorable Raila Odinga will be with this. Well, no, as they have rightfully said, is not much of a strike, is not much of protest as one would want to look at it, but negotiations with the people of Kenya, and those engaging in the activities, that is the rallies, must maintain peace and make sure that no property is destroyed. Otherwise, we will deal with them ruthlessly. This is according to Professor Kindiki Kithure, who is the CS Interior. And of course, the president saying that there will be accorded security as expected, and therefore will keenly follow up on this event of today to keep you up to tabs. And as the question of education, primary school head teachers wish list, and as they speak of this conversation in terms of what they would expect for the schools and for the curriculum, most importantly for the adjustments of those ones that are taking up the competency-based curriculum bit. Definitely lots of adjustments that are not so easy, but then again, the conversations are on as to making sure that at least our students do not get to experience the difficulties, even as we continue to try and incorporate the views of all stakeholders as to how best we can handle the competency-based curriculum. Just who killed Tob Cohen? That is the question that the Standard is asking this morning. This is after 3 years of uncertainty. Then we're looking over her fate, and the widow of murderer Dutch tycoon, that is Tob Cohen, or murdered, had been freed. And of course, as DPP Haji seeks an inquest, the question remains as to who really killed Tob Cohen, whether there's going to be justice for him and his family, who've also been at the top of pushing for this so that it can be established as to what really might have triggered his demise. And the Daily Nation, front page of the Daily Nation. Kenya seeks about 92 billion treasury in talks with World Bank for loan to be secured by June. There's a story captured on page 8, even as we've been advised not to focus on getting loans because we are not in the best of state economically, and therefore servicing some of these loans then becomes a problem. That is captured on page 8. On the other side, it's in relation to the peace deal that has been brokered, and 53 armed groups in DR Congo signed peace deal. There's a story captured on page 24, and of course definitely one to be celebrated. You cannot outsource parenting to teachers. PS Belio Kipsang reminds the parents, and boarding schools shock for parents. And of course this ban starts next year. We're talking about a move that caught families unawares. The government slapped a ban on registration of new boarding schools, that is for children in grade 1 to 9, and any form of boarding for junior secondary school children, that is from pastoralist communities, and of course will however be exempt from the new rules. These are the pastoralist communities who will be exempted, but this will be interesting to watch, and we also get to see whether indeed the parents will accept for this to happen, and whether then it will be instrumental to make sure that these parents again are engaged in their lives of the children, or in the lives of their children. On the other side, Ruto's sweetheart deal to entice members of parliament. Remember, he's always been on a charm offensive just to get to see to it that he enjoys that aspect of representation, and therefore the head of state, the National has, of course, established that he has given a go-ahead for members of parliament in Kenya Kwanza Alliance, that is to support proposals to establish the office of the leader of opposition. Of course, the entrenchment of the national government constituency development fund. It will be interesting to see just how this will turn out and how instrumental it would be in making sure that then they are able to work, of course, and getting this office of the opposition then overseeing and equally just checking on how the government is conducting its activities. That is for purposes of posterity and for purposes of making sure that Kenyans get to enjoy the best of the government. Raila starts 30 days of defiance, if you'd want to call them that. Then, of course, the Azimio Brigade will begin, going out to converge, that is on Kamukunji ground in Kibra, for the launch of anti-Ruto rallies, which will lead to the parallel Jamhuri celebrations at Jacaranda grounds in Nairobi. That is on the 12th of December, Monday, and we'll keenly be following up on this as well to see how it will be received and just what they will manage to get out of this, and just strike a blow. That is on the question of the judiciary for gender balance in the Supreme Court. There can be no more than 4 judges of one gender in the Supreme Court, and of course, they say the appellate court has declared it has also directed that Judicial Service Commission should ensure that there is compliance with the 2/3 gender rule when recruiting. That is a story captured on page 10, and definitely one that is being experienced and witnessed or conversed upon across different sectors as to what the Constitution declares or dictates. And if we are to look at what then the People Daily details this morning, let's see what the People Daily has to say this morning. Mr. Director, do we have the People Daily? Yes, we have the People Daily app, and of course it's about the Azimio lineup and what is slated for today, as we seek to see whether they get to achieve anything out of the Kamukunji conversations that will begin today. As they say, would run for perhaps 30 days until that moment where then they would proceed also to these parallel, conversations or parallel sessions as to the question of Jamhuri Day. And away from it, boarding schools face slow closure, and grade 1 to 9 will be day schools so that parents can take care of their children. This is according to the PS education, and they say that this would be instrumental to making sure that we do not get our students to boarding schools at a very tender age, which then would appear as though is a form of parents running away from their responsibility. And baby Travis likely killed by his parents. This is quite disturbing, and reports coming out as to the question of what really played out upon the death of baby Travis. That one is a story captured on page 2 of the People Daily, and these revelations are on, remember, investigations as well. have also been on as to whether there was the aspect of negligence at the level of the hospital or not. On the other side, they say that phone users then will have to pay more for digital transactions. This is a story captured on page 14, of course, on the front page as well. Central Bank brings back charges put on hold during COVID, but says they will be slashed by about half. And so we'll be looking to see how this would be addressed. Those are the key stories, and we'll be expounding them further alongside the gentlemen that will be joining me for the conversation. For now, allow us to briefly look at the stories prepared by my team, more or less the same ones that we have touched on as to the papers, and that local farmers will breathe a sigh of relief. That is after President William Ruto's cabinet resolved to give local producers a priority over suppliers of imported maize. And as Mike Kagwongo then reports, President William Ruto's cabinet has donated a total of about 17 million shillings to the National Drought Mitigation Appeal Fund to aid in the escalating drought situation in the country.
President William Ruto's cabinet secretaries meeting provided a reprieve for Kenyan farmers after the team resolved to give local producers priority over suppliers of imported maize. The cabinet noted that as harvesting of maize was ongoing across the country, this year's crop estimated to yield about 30 million bags of maize. In a statement, the executive said in honor of our nation's sacred duty to its farmers, the farmers' produce will be accorded priority access to the market. With a consumption trend of 45 million bags, the cabinet secretaries resolved to cover the deficit by importing 10 million bags of maize. The importation by the private sector will commence in February 2023 and shall be incentivized by way of a custom duty waiver. The cabinet further gave its contribution to the ongoing drought response appeal by transmitting its salary for the month of November to the drought relief kitty. More than 17 million shillings had been transferred to the response kitty. The decision by the cabinet to forego its salary was arrived at during its third session, held on November 29, 2022, when it was appraised of the drought situation in the country. As part of the long-term measures to address the devastating effects of climate change, the desertification cabinet approved the National Tree Growing Restoration Campaign. The tree growing campaign targets to mobilize the nation in planting 15 million trees by the year 2030, translating to 30% national tree cover. Mike Kagwongo, TV 47, Nairobi.
The High Court has allowed an application by the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP Nordin Haji, to withdraw Tob Cohen's murder case against Sarah Wairimu and her co-accused Peter Karanja. This is after the court found out that the objections raised by Cohen's family had no merit and dismissed the same. Paul Kirobi with that.
After years in the corridors of justice and police custody, Sarah Wairimu can now breathe a sigh of relief. A ruling by Judge Daniel Ogembo now gives a leeway for the case to be heard through an inquest at a Chief Magistrate Court to provide an opportunity for the parties to present any information that had not explored substantial evidence before the court and the investigations earlier conducted by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Lawyer representing the accused Sarah Wairimu, Philip Murgor, now wants every person involved in the case be investigated over the matter.
Going forward, Sarah would like to appeal to anyone involved in the inquest to ensure that the investigations are expanded to include everyone who was involved in manipulating and falsifying evidence, and of course, those who claim to have an interest in her co-owned matrimonial property. Every motive must be thoroughly investigated.
The High Court allowed an application by the Director of Public Prosecution, DPP Nordin Haji, to withdraw Tob Cohen's murder case against Sarah Wairimu and her co-accused Peter Karanja. Judge Ogembo noted that the objections raised by Cohen's family had no merit and dismissed the same. The judge noted that the DPP did not act in bad faith or violated his mandate as enshrined under Article 157(1) and 9 of the Constitution when he sought to have the case withdrawn and the matter be heard through an inquest. Sarah Wairimu says they have been together with her late husband for almost 30 years before he died.
For 30 years. And you cannot tell me that I did not exist. You can't tell me that we didn't have a life together. And we have always been the envy, especially of those two, one Habri, Van Straten, and what's his name? Bernard Cohen. Bernard. So I lovingly, and as I have always been very open with them, I'll tell them to just hold their horses.
Sarah, together with Mr. Karanja, were charged with the tycoon's murder in October 2019. They denied the offense. Cohen's family had opposed the withdrawal on grounds that the DPP failed to give any written reasons and that their rights under Victims Act 2014 had been violated. Their objection was based on Section 23(1) of the Act. The tycoon Tob Cohen had been reported missing on July 2019, but the Directorate of Criminal Investigations detectives failed to locate him until his body was discovered in a septic tank at his compound in Kitisuru, Spring Valley, Nairobi. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
And the Senate Health Committee, that is Tuesday, toured Kenyatta National Hospital to unravel the turn of events that really led to the death of 2-year-old Travis Minor, who was rushed to the facility with a forked jembe lodged in his skull. And as Elizabeth Otieno now reports, the Kenyatta National Hospital management, through Chief Executive Officer, that is Dr. Evanson Kamuri, Tuesday provided a detailed report on what really happened on that fateful day, where, of course, they dismissed claims of negligence.
The Senate Health Committee today made a courtesy visit at the Kenyatta National Hospital to unravel what happened during the 14-hour period after the late 2-year-old Travis Minor was admitted to the facility with a forked jembe lodged in his skull. According to Kenyatta National Hospital, they received a call from Thika Level 5 Hospital on Monday the 10th of October at 3:55 p.m. requesting for the late Travis referral. The late Travis Minor arrived at the Kenyatta National Hospital Accident and Emergency Department at 6 p.m. and was accompanied by 2 emergency medical technicians together with his mother and aunt. Travis was then admitted to the resuscitation room where he was under observation pending registration. After registration, he was reviewed by Dr. Tabu Okinyi, a medical officer and a neurosurgeon. The doctor then requested for various lab tests and a neurosurgical review. Clinical results revealed that Travis was conscious with a forked jembe lodged in his skull, though the handle was missing. At 9:15 p.m., Dr. Okinyi contacted Dr. Patrick Akuku, a senior neurosurgeon who recommended surgery. At 11:10 p.m., the doctors established that there was a problem in Travis' blood clotting system which required correction. 20 minutes later, Professor Mwenda, a senior consultant hematologist, recommended blood transfusion, which commenced at 3 a.m. on the 11th of October and ended at 6 a.m. At 8:30 a.m., an admission request for the late Travis was made at the main theatre, but there was an ongoing operation forcing them to wait for over 4 hours. At 12:30 p.m., all was set for Travis' operation, which was led by Dr. Bore and Dr. Mwili, who successfully removed the forked jembe, but the patient developed complications and succumbed. The Senate Health Committee, however, raised concerns on the amount of time wasted before the operation commenced. On the 8th of November this year, the Senate Health Committee hosted the County Level 5 Hospital Management to pinpoint what transpired when the deceased was admitted at 4 p.m. on the 10th of October. It was then revealed that the Thika Level 5 Hospital lacked enough personnel and vital equipment needed for the procedure and hence decided to transfer him to Kenyatta National Hospital.
Should be able to introspect and have better dialogue on this question of having doctors punctually and available.
The late Travis Minor's mother, Judith Mudhoni, has accused the Kenyatta National Hospital of negligence, saying doctors at the facility gave them a cold shoulder since they could not come up with the 20,500 Kenya shillings needed.
Ule daktari nilikuta huko alikuwa tu anapaguza meza. Hata kuangalia mwenye ameingia.
Mimi kwangu niliona kama huko Kenyatta wangeshughulika, huyo mtoto hangekufa. Alikuwa anazungumza vizuri.
The late Travis was laid to rest on the 18th of October in Kilimambogo, Kiambu County. Elizabeth Atieno, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Examination entered day 3 Tuesday with Education Ministry officials supervising the exams in a number of centers, even as National Examination Council warns that school heads demanding fees from candidates will definitely not go in the right books of the ministry.
Kenya National Examination Council Chief Executive Officer David Njengere earlier today supervised the distribution of examination materials at the Westlands Container Collection Center, praising the coordination between the security agencies and officials at the Council and Ministry of Education in preventing cheating cases. The Council says no serious case has been reported so far.
I must say and applaud the center managers and the multi-agency team, because in ordinary this year or this particular exam, they have done a brilliant job. And where there has been those cases, especially of the phones, you remember last week on Friday, we had some students in Dadaab who were found with phones. The invigilators and supervisors have now upped their game and they are doing a very good job in frisking, and therefore we are moving on pretty well.
In certain areas, candidates have reportedly been denied access to exam rooms, with the council sending a stern warning to school heads who are demanding fees from candidates.
So there's no child in this country who should be denied the opportunity to sit for the exams, least of all on matters to do with money. The government has already paid for all the examination administration fees, and there is no child who should be asked to pay any money, whether it is in the name of lunches or any other facilitation.
The council has also put up measures to ensure pregnant candidates sit for the exams in the friendliest of environments. A number of counties in the country have reported a high number of early pregnancies, including Kajiado, that has over 250 pregnant girls sitting for the examinations.
When they are expectant, we usually even take the exams to the hospital. Even the prisoners, we administer the exams where they are.
Also, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Belio Kipsang, supervised the examination in Mombasa, where he hinted at a possibility of doing away with boarding schools. Collins Lusweti, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, Education PS Belio Kipsang has said that boarding schools and categorization of secondary schools may be phased out in future as implementation of the competency-based curriculum takes shape. The government has begun putting in place measures that will ensure there is a smooth transition of grade 6 learners to grade 7 who will attend junior high school domiciled in primary schools.
So here,
a few days after the government gave a directive of domiciling grade 7, 8 and 9 in primary schools, it has embarked on the next plan, that of ensuring there is a smooth transition of grade 7 learners next year without hiccups. One of the issues the government is currently working on is infrastructure. And as Education PS says, some schools will have to share their resources with other schools.
My officers at the ministry have informed me that almost 50% of your schools have produced a secondary school. And therefore, it will make it easy for us to share facilities. And such facilities would include our human resource. But the most critical facility is that we shall be socializing our children to basic science. And therefore, we shall require to share some of our laboratories.
The changes presently happening in the education sector as the competency-based curriculum continues to take shape may result to scraping off of boarding schools and categorization of secondary schools.
And the first 9 years of our learning between grade 1 and grade 9, the direction that government will be taking is day schooling.
Meanwhile, owners of private schools have recommendations on the implementation of the CBC, especially after grades 7, 8 and 9 were domiciled in primary schools.
Kama tu vile imesemekana junior secondary iwe domiciled katika school, hata katika the private schools iwe the same way. ili kuwe na usawa, kusiwe na watoto wa kubaguliwa.
Recently, the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms presented its recommendations to President William Ruto, who gave a directive that grade 7 class will be domiciled in primary school. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
Now, 50 armed groups from DRC that attended the 3rd Inter-Congolese peace talks in Nairobi Tuesday have agreed to lay down their arms in a bid to end the conflict that has claimed thousands of lives. This even as the death toll in last week's Kishishe attack has risen to about 300 according to Congo government officials. Stanley Nyaringita with that.
The curtains have come down for the 3rd Inter-Congolese peace talks on the ongoing unrest in the eastern DRC, with former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is also the East African Community's lead facilitator of the DRC peace process, expressing optimism that the delegation has achieved milestones in brokering peace.
Tumesema tumeapeleka kwa viongozi wa Afrika Mashariki, na ndivyo hivyo vikundi viweze kuongea na serikali zao, warudi makwao, wawache wa Kongo kwa amani.
Among the resolutions made after the week-long consultations between armed groups, civil society groups and victims of sexual violence is to have a continued cessation of hostilities.
And at the same time, they're all ready to continue participating to the PDDRCS program, which is a program of disarmament, demobilization, reintegration into our communities and stabilization.
But more than 1,500 kilometers away in eastern town of Kishishe in DRC, the residents do not share the optimism as they mourn at least 300 people who were killed in a massacre last week. Congo's government has so far blamed the M23 rebel group, which has denied responsibility. This even as Uhuru noted that he was optimistic that the M23 group will honor the requirements of the Luanda process, among them ending current hostilities and exiting from Rutshuru, Kiwanja and Managana before he can meet them.
Kwa hivyo wakitimiza, hawa pia na wale ambao ni wa Kongo watajumuishwa kwa shughuli za amani za nchi ya Kongo.
The former president also noted that despite the EAC carrying its mandate of bringing back the peace, the Congolese nationals will have to do the heavy lifting of maintaining the peace. The next stop will be Goma for the next phase of the talks to be held next year between January and February. Stanley Nyaringita, TV 47, Nairobi.
So today, Azimio coalition party leader Raila Odinga hands President William Ruto his first leadership test when he plans to stage his inaugural major protest against the Kenya Kwanza regime. Dubbed Kamukunji Consultative Forum, Odinga's anti-government campaign is seen as a relevance test for him politically, while for President Ruto, his response on how he manages Odinga compared to his predecessors will definitely be the litmus test. Let's take a look at that.
When he holds his first formal public protest against President William Ruto, in just 4 months since the president won the election, Azimio coalition party leader Raila Odinga will be taking a political gamble on his political career as he puts his former ally turned foe since the Kanu days, President Ruto, to test, while testing the political waters on his political charm, a case of two political schemers out to outsmart each other.
He's a student of Moi in many ways. He's also a student of Raila. Don't forget that. Yeah, so he's got 2 teachers. And he outsmarted Moi. That's why the Moi family was thrown out. Because he outsmarted his teacher. Raila is also his teacher. And he outsmarted him in getting elected. The question is whether the teacher has found new ammunition to fix the student. And whether the student is also ready for that likelihood.
Wednesday's Kamukunji meet premised on Odinga's protest of a stolen election victory, and the ongoing cleanup at the Electoral Commission IEBC is a recurring script, according to political pundits and Kenya Kwanza opponents, which may make or build him politically.
question that comes up is the whole country. How does the whole country take it? If the impression created is that Raila is back to his rabble-rousing ways, so Kamukunji will be just another rabble-rousing event. And so he has to be careful to avoid that.
President William Ruto, unlike his predecessors, has stuck to his guns in that he will not allow the political path taken by his successors by going for a handshake with Odinga.
Sasa tumemshinda. Ameanza lugha ya maandamano. Na nia yake ni ile ile. Ati auzie huyu rais wetu woga, ati aitwe kwa handshake. Inawezekana? Inawezekana?
Presidents Daniel Moi, Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta have all been forced by Odinga to incorporate him into their administrations through notable handshakes. Could this be Odinga's search for another handshake, and how will Ruto manage him?
Raila is a very hard-working man. He's a good schemer, better than Kalonzo, and better than a lot of other people. Only that he has to be better than Ruto.
The four are being forced out because William Ruto and the Uda administration want a clean slate at the IBC and fill it with his stooges and henchmen for the 2027 elections.
Odinga's double-edged sword in his anti-government campaign has also cast light on his core principal Kalonzo Musyoka, who harbors 2027 political ambitions. The Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Caucus has adopted a resolution to create the office of the official opposition leader, seen as a attack to tame Raila, despite the alliance disputing the claim. All eyes will be watching Odinga on whether he can sustain the momentum, with another public consultative forum expected to coincide with Jamhuri Day. Apol Kamau, TV47.
Thank you, Apollo, for that story. Equally, that forms the basis of our conversation this morning as we wait to follow up on the events of these Kamukunji sessions. But away from it, or more or less, on the same breath, our Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has requested Azimio La Umoja party leader Raila Odinga to provide a schedule of the planned demonstrations in order to provide the coalition with security. Raila and his supporters are to hold a public consultative forum at Kamukunji grounds today, as well as parallel Jamhuri Day celebrations at Jacaranda Gardens.
As the Azimio One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga and his supporters plan for a public consultative meeting at Kamukunji grounds tomorrow, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has guaranteed them of security during the anti-government meetings on Wednesday, December 7th and on Monday, December 12th.
That the government will not be engaged in any obstruction or resistance of people who want to lawfully picket, demonstrate, or assemble. We are on high alert and we are fully engaged to ensure no Kenyan limits the rights of another Kenyan who is not participating in this activity by way of trying to interfere with their businesses, their activities, or their peace.
Kindiki says the ministry is not interested in disrupting the meeting, as that would infringe the organizers' rights under Article 37 of the Constitution, which provides that every person has a right to demonstrate and to present petitions to public authorities.
Freedom of assembly and association, including the freedom to demonstrate and picket, is a fundamental right and enshrined in the Constitution of our country.
Kindiki has since asked Odinga to provide schedules for the planned meetings so that they can be provided with security.
We will not politicize the matter. We don't want to be drawn into political discussions around the matter. We will remain professional to make sure that those who want to air their grievances are given space so that others who don't agree with them do not interrupt bona fide and lawful activities around demonstrations and the freedoms of association and assembly.
His sentiments come just a day after President William Ruto instructed him to deploy enough security as the opposition carries out its protest. Azimio La Umoja leader Raila Odinga has since clarified that the meetings are nationwide public consultative forums and not demonstrations as had been interpreted by some Kenyans.
Mapambano, bado mapamba.
Flora Limuki, TV 47.
Well, bado mapambano, as they would say, but to what level? For whose benefits? Is Right Honorable Raila Odinga keen for a handshake or a scenario where he's going to be called on the table? Well, those are some of the things that we decipher on this morning. But before we even delve deep into that conversation that actually makes the basis of our conversation this morning, and perhaps the biggest story of the day, as we await to see how the events of the day will shape up, it is also important that we look at some other stories that are equally very, very important. And I am delighted to introduce to you the gentleman that I have on set. Maybe we should give precedence or prominence to Evans. After a very long time, he disappeared on us. I don't know where he had gone to, but we're glad that he's here kicking and doing, so well in other quarters. And sometimes we thank God for social media, Evans, because then you're able to trace and find out whether your friends are doing well.
Oh, sure.
So at least I had the confidence that you've been well, and we're happy to have you here. Evans Wafula is a political analyst. Asante sana for creating time.
Thank you.
You've been well?
Yes, I've been well.
Karibu sana.
Yeah, asante.
Asante. And as well, we have Engineer Alex Mwathi, governance expert. This one disappeared at some point in time, but also came back, and we're glad that he is here. Engineer, you've been well as well from the last time we spoke?
Very, very well. And let me say that it's really a pleasure and an honor for this station to keep calling me to come and have a conversation in the morning.
That's true.
Thank you. I can't take it for granted.
Thank you. We do not take your presence here for granted either. Asante sana. Nordin.
Yes.
Mambo. Now Nordin, the last time I was here, Nikitambo, and then I went for leave, and then you were here at some point with Stanley. But yes, here we are from the first time that nilikuja from leave. So you were well?
Yeah, I'm well.
Karibu sana. I'm good as well. This is Wakili Nordin Kagai, and also a friend of the show, and most importantly, the brains that have been deciphering on crucial matters in the country. We say we do not relent, we do not stop. Sometimes when that political season is over, you sort of feel like maybe there'll be nothing much to speak about. But as time goes by, you realize that there's so much. There's the desire that hails from the people of Kenya to hear, formidable guys coming on board, speaking to the issues, and, for them to be affected in terms of, just getting the government taking action. And so this gentleman will help me look at some of these stories that are taking center stage as we delve deep into the political scene. So we kickstart by, first of all, say, off the cuff, we're saying that, give it to President Uhuru Kenyatta, that he has tried, in this conversation of peace, with the blessing of the president, he appears to be doing well in short spans.
Actually, absolutely, because if you understand the conflict in the Great Lakes region, and particularly in DRC, I think from the Arusha talks where Nelson Mandela was involved, and also the quiet diplomacy or the silence diplomacy among leaders of the region, I think Uhuru Kenyatta has come out as somebody bold enough. Look, he's gone to the conflict area. He was in Goma, I think, a couple of days or weeks ago, just to be able to understand the plight of the people of DRC. And with the deployment of Kenyan troops in DRC, it's very critical that him also, remember a Kenyan general leading the contingent that is in the DRC, and then former President Uhuru Kenyatta being one of the mediators. I think he has done quite well to bring these warring rebels or groups to Nairobi and being able to strike a deal. But perhaps what is more important is that we are not sure whether this deal will hold. Remember the M23 coming out from the 2012 March 23rd peace accord that was not honored by the Kinshasa government. And I think once these groups come together, remember there are almost 100 groups that are perceived to be fighting inside DRC. What the groups that have come are about 50, almost half. I think he's really tried, and I think he needs to get support not only from regional leaders, but also Africa Union and the United Nations.
All right, and this one, right after that one of Ethiopia, you know, this conversation with Eritrea, that the president is doing well. As to whether the peace will hold also is another thing, because historically we have seen what has played out, and sometimes when you look at some of this animosity that plays out in different African countries, you realize that it is beyond what we see with our naked eyes. There are instances where we've had leaders from the African continent as well going to broker some of these deals, and then they've been accused of, you know, double speak. They've been accused of not being genuine. So in your own opinion, that the president is now taking a good ground in terms of, you know, positioning himself and positioning Kenya as
first of all, let's celebrate something that happened last evening.
Yes.
Morocco beat Spain 3-0.
Yes, we should have started by the game. You know, like, honestly, it is here and it is a surprise. The papers say, what do the papers say? Morocco stunned Spain to storm into quarters.
Yeah,
interesting.
They actually stunned them.
Yes.
Because they held until the end of the game, held on the extra time.
Right.
And by either being smart or stroke of luck, Spain missed
because this is Spain, to be honest. This is Spain.
Honest, yeah.
Yes.
The question that has been on social media is whether Morocco is in Africa.
No, that's the thing, or in Europe.
But I want to celebrate Morocco as being Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, because you become Africa by your position in the continental, whatever that has happened. And I think it's very good to have an African team in the quarterfinals of the World Cup.
Yeah.
Having said that, the first person that President William Ruto appointed to a position was his previous boss.
Yeah.
Remember, he called him boss until the end. His previous boss, and appointed him as an ambassador. And I think he's done quite well when you consider he's less than 100 years since he was appointed to be able to broker peace for Ethiopia and broker peace for DRC. And I hear what Wafula is saying, that this might not hold and blah, blah, because we all know that the fight there is nothing to do with political power or anything. It's more about resources. And will the greed and demand and desire for resources end? No. Will those people who are sponsoring both warring sides stop sponsoring? No, because as long as they can get the benefit of the resources that are there, they'll continue sponsoring them. But I think it's important that at least people are sitting together and talking, because peradventure, if you look at Ethiopia, and I hope I'm right in this, that they're not curtailing information.
Right.
Since the peace was brokered in South Africa, there hasn't been animosity in Ethiopia, in my opinions, which means that something is holding on, and that gives people an opportunity to be able to talk to each other. Yeah. And I think it's a good job that he's doing. Let's hope he does more than that. It of course confirms that they were friends even, and they were shouting at each other in public meetings.
And does it bring us to a point where then we ask whether he was genuine in this conversation of support? You know, someone asked that last week, and I think that question is here up until date.
People accuse me of using this thing so often that it become a cliche.
Yeah.
That the game of politics is a seduction game.
Yeah.
And what that means is that it's about personality cult, creating propaganda, and seducing the masses.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily tell them what you're going to do, but you tell them what they want to hear and needs to be done. And that's a propaganda bit. So we don't have enemies in politics. People are all friends. President William Ruto and Honorable Raila Odinga are very good friends. I suspect that if once in a while they pick the phone and call each other in the evening.
Yeah.
I suspect that they go have tea together once in a while, because Ruto doesn't take alcohol,
yes.
so must be having tea together. While you fellas are out here shouting at each other until your sound become hoarse. They are political cousins.
Interesting.
And I think even more stronger, they are political brothers.
Well, that one cannot be disputed, and we'll be coming to that, of course, to discuss this in depth as we look at the planned sessions or Kamukunji sessions. But then again, in your own opinion, what does it speak to you as a young person in terms of us having our very own leaders just exit to go home and enjoy, but literally taking space, you know, in the African continent, taking space in the global space, so to speak, you know, to be on the forefront of conversations of peace, which is one of the key things that has been a problem in Africa, if we were to speak of today?
First and foremost, we have to see that he actually enjoys it. You can clearly see he
Yeah.
has a passion for that peace process, and he was agitated the other day, courtesy of some short change that happened to those who were attending delegates. And Congo is, there is very unique or peculiar, because the interests there are many. There are colonial interests, there are personal interests, and then there are those who benefit when that country is in chaos. And there are those who believe that once, you know, it's a very rich country, a very beautiful country, and if it was to have peace and political stability, it would be a very rich country. But there are those who prosper when it's in disarray, there are issues here and there. And so I believe in what he's trying to do. That is actually, the process is actually reaping benefits as it is right now. Whether it does it to the end, we wait to see, but how he's moving is actually, he's actually done something moving forward. And I believe also the president is happy, because at the end of the day, it makes him, it gives him a success, because he appointed him, and also they deliberate on issues, I'm very sure. And as he rightfully said, if you read Linjiro's book, they are political cousins. Yeah. It's a bourgeoisie club. It's more or less, you know, their kids play together, they mingle, they themselves talk. So it's what Manago says, weka kwa lungs, you breathe in, breathe out. But those who walk around them most of the time don't understand that. And that is why they would be insulting these figures. Then they wonder how these two end up shaking hands. Because for them, it's never personal. The I in interest is always constant.
Right.
What do I gain from this? If I gain, you can be the president, so long as you don't interfere with whatever I want. So it's more or less, it's never, there's no animosity.
Right.
It's more or less about, it's a competition. I win, I take over, you protect my interest and what have you. Yeah.
All right. Well, one thing that we can't walk out of this set without talking of is the question of education. A lot of adjustments, and of course the reports, you know, of course, being collected by the team that was tasked by the president to handle this, the adjustments that we find every morning on the papers or generally in the news. We are always talking about education, that today this is what we're going to do, tomorrow this is what we're going to do. Are we getting our students into a state of confusion? And does this then guarantee us, you know, some security or some essence of stability as to education in future?
Maybe before I answer that, just a very quick comment on the peace process, is that I think one of the critical things is to address the question of the M23. Remember, these are remnants of the Hutus.
The president says he hopes to meet them, and the leaders actually.
And again, exactly, because you see, the question of identity and the right of return of the Tutsis who went into DRC as refugees should really, or the bone of contention.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that will be addressed. But coming to education, I think it puzzles a lot of people that this is in the 21st century. I remember when Somali had free education, when Kenya still did not have free education, despite the conflict in Somalia. But one of the critical things is that I think at this point in time in our country, we shouldn't be talking so much about the education system. See, I mean, 53 years since independence, that we cannot be able to put down a proper education system. And using the education system, either politicizing it or using it as experiments. You see, it's very difficult to to be in this country and understand what level of education, because even now people doubt even the degrees, the level, the quality of education that or the quality of students we are producing from universities and other colleges. I think the government need to be very serious on to address the question of education, not only to try to put experiments on every time. I'm sure even look at what the president has done. Come in, put a committee together, think about what they would need to do with the education. Again, people are going back almost square one. I don't know whether even our technocrats who are very much involved in education probably don't give the president proper advice. I think we should not be able to just come and politicize the education system. It's the most critical
unit
in our national development. So I think what we need to do is that we don't need to make our education look like something that can be able to be tilted at will or at whatever time. I think it's almost like security. We need to just make sure that the system of education that we have, it is more in line with our culture, in line with our regions, so that people can be able to understand, our kids can be able to learn from the small level to going up to university, understanding that the education system is like, remember the old system before 844. I think that's where we need to go, because I think we are doing a lot of disservice when it comes to educational reforms.
And perhaps you've witnessed the previous system before 844 and then 844, and now us trying to just get it right on the question of competency-based curriculum. For the longest of time, there's been that accusation, whether it is true or not, that also is debatable, that we produce, students or graduates that are half-baked for the job market. Is it, or was it in order for us to have scrapped off the 844 or even the system that was there prior, in the name of making advancements in the space of education, advancements that we really do not appear to quite understand?
My firm belief is that the only permanent thing in life is change.
Okay.
Change will happen.
Yeah.
In respect of you, in spite of you, in spite of you. To an extent that if you stick to the same thing, and expect different results, then we say that you're insane. Meaning that when the change from the 763 system, the people who sat down together and realized that that system had an issue that needed to be addressed. And I think it was more of a case, if I remember, that was very academic and very theoretical in its input, so that the graduates that were coming out were more theoretical as opposed to practical. They didn't want to do things for themselves. They wanted to be, because that system was basically in the educator's mind, was meant to create workers for the masters. And they wanted to create a system that allows people at a lower level to start using their talents and abilities to be able to think and be able to participate in the development of the economy in a more practical way. To an extent, our challenge is, when you do the change, have you done enough studies to be able to understand what needs to be done? Yeah. For example, when you move from 844 was supposed to be more technical oriented, so that people were becoming more technical. CBC is exactly the same. That from the lower level of education, and I keep hearing people saying that Britain has had the same system for so many years. So what? We are not Britain. Yeah. We are Kenya. We can have our own that is different. As a matter of fact, why should we go to classrooms? Maybe we should start thinking of something else. The bottom line, I'm saying we don't have to copy everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
Because if everyone copied everyone else, we will not be having a mobile phone.
That's true.
If everyone copied everybody else, we will not be having a plane. If everyone copied everybody else, think about even a station like this, where we can speak to you, together with you, and within an instant, somebody in the US can listen to us. That's because somebody thought differently and decided not to conform to the norm that is there. So the question on the CBC, in terms of its practicability, is, does it achieve the result that it was meant to do? And I think what has happened is that the government has learned very quickly that there are drawbacks in that. And that's the thing about life. Engineers, we know that. Yeah. When you find that a shaft is not rotating the way it's supposed to be rotating, you don't condemn the shaft. You get it out and find out what is the issue with that shaft. Yeah. Maybe in the formation there's some area that metal was more than the other, so it's not able to rotate correctly. To an extent, the best step. For me, one of the key problem with the CBC was the transition between the class 6 to the so-called junior secondary 7 and 8, because we didn't have the capacity to be able to absorb that in secondary schools. Being a member of board of management for some schools, then you realize that we had no capacity, no ability to be able to handle that. The ship has left the dock. What do we do with it? Is to make adjustments that ensure that that system provides us the answers that we were meant to address.
If this report were to speak of, you know, a scenario where this is actually not the best direction that we would have taken, would a reverse, which of course the government has confirmed they're not, you know, intending to do that, but would a reverse really, you know, make them appear as though then they're doing the wrong thing, or would a reverse really, you know, be justified based on the kind of reports that we're going to get? Allow us to answer that after the short break.
Okay.
You are watching TV 47, the home of untold stories. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.
It's hard. The government can't reverse because it spent money on it, and the government doesn't have money to waste. Already people are told hakuna pesa ya bure. That is why they even have interest in in the Hustler Fund. So at the end of the day, I believe the CBC had some teething problems. One, it was expensive. Those are things we were to look into to make it more affordable to the parents. And then it was trying to change the exam-oriented kind of education system that we have, where people they attend classes, but a day or a week to an exam, they take all the books and cram, just pass, and move to the next class. That's why we're talking about half-baked. So it was changing that, in that even if you finish school, there are life skills you have acquired. That's why we used to see kids acting like policemen, doctors, and what have you. So at the end of the it's something good, but it needs a lot of stakeholder engagement, because you can't run it alone. Because if you look at back then, the former CS for education, he looked more abrasive, a bit arrogant, I know it all. So you see, you can't engage from that level. But I believe if they move it better in a way that they engage stakeholders, for example, they take their opinions, and we plan ahead, as opposed to just knee-jerk reactions. Because you see, also knee-jerk reactions don't help. Right now, we are being told that the junior secondaries will be constructed by MPs through CDF. MPs who we know what they do with CDF most of the time. So you see, we need concrete answers to the teething problem, so that we make this education system something worthwhile. And they should use it as a long-term plan. You know, just plan it ahead. Don't just plan for 5 years as you seek re-election. Because if you do that, then you will miss the plot, and you'll have wasted the lives of the children who are actually going through the system.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we shall that one. Gentlemen, ulipewa ngapi fuliza? Si fuliza, inaitwa Hustler Fund. Ulichukua how much? Because you were not going to tell me that you did not.
No,
you tried at least to see,
but I wish
you qualify for what?
No, I've not even tried, because I think I wish the best to those who are trying. And I'm hoping that it will make a lot of sense. But unfortunately, is that most people did not realize that this is going to be mobile money. You know, a lot of people had that.
Even the Kenya Kwanza team itself, you know, did not know. Most of them were surprised.
And I'm telling you, this is when the president talks about conmanship. This is one of the greatest acts of conmanship. Because
you think?
Yeah, to be very honest, you see, look at Tala and even Mshwari. These are mobile money platforms, which actually, when people defaulted, they easily went into CRB. And the purpose of, the intent of going to CRB was actually to enforce or to encourage people to be able to pay. Now, you say you remove people from CRB, give them money, put it in measures, and then subject KRA on them. You see, it's really, it doesn't make sense. But, well, they have said that it just started. Let's see how it gets going. Because for sure, this money is not for free. It was look, the president, I think somebody said that even the deputy president went through the platform and was given about 1,000 and something. I think now everybody can be able to get that money or access that money. That was not the intent. The intent was to probably, and my thinking was that if you're a trader or maybe a hustler, in that case, you would apply for that money through the normal application process, fill some forms, get some guarantee, then probably get a loan through the bank, and then the money is channeled through the bank, and then you have a proper system of repaying, whether through a SACCO that you belong to, and something like that. And then the intent was to enforce and support SACCOs so that they can be able to give this money to their members. That would have made sense. But mobile money platform, without any safeguards. Let's see how it goes.
And talk about these telcos and just how they're going to accept for government to come in with this arrangement of a fund that is likely to cost them millions and billions of shillings. Are they not going to sabotage this? These are some of the questions that are being asked. And how much have you, or are you eligible to, let me not ask how much have you gotten? How much?
For me?
Yes.
I like I said earlier, change is the only thing that happens, and a lot of as human beings, we are always at the upfront of resisting change, and when change happens, it must happen. When banks were the main place where you got your money, let me give you an experience that you do not know. That banks used to open 9 a.m. in the morning and used to close at 12 on Monday to Friday. So you didn't go to deposit or withdraw money from a bank between those hours. you only, like Friday,
there were no ATMs
you
at
wait
this point.
until Monday morning. Yes. And money was put on a ledger that you went and showed your record, which meant that you could only go to your branch, either with a passbook or on a ledger. In 1990, computers were introduced in the banking, and the idea was those would make work easier. All the workers in the banks went on strike, and a lot of them were sacked because of those strikes, because we were resisting the introduction of computers in the bank because we were going to lose jobs. What has happened is that instead of going now from 9 to 12, Monday to Friday, and over the weekend you cannot withdraw money, now you transact in your bedroom at any time you want. If you want to transfer to a full at 3 million shillings, just go to my account and boom, it gets to him. Which means that there are changes that has happened, that things must change. What has happened with the computer introduction is that the banks grew from 6 to, I think now there are almost 70 registered banks in Kenya and about 34 active ones. What has meant also is that a bank like GOtv Bank has, I think, 65,000 agents, which means while they would have employed 3,000 employees, now they're employed over 140,000 people through their agents, which means the jobs did not reduce, the jobs increased. The bank reach increased for about 300,000-400,000 customers only. This will shock you, to about 18 million today, which means a technology must change. That in the year 2022, it would have been huge folly for you to expect a government to have a system where you go and fill a form and go and apply for a loan.
So this is embracing.
We don't do it now. I have just applied money from from Standard Bank. I didn't walk to the branch, but I didn't fill up a form.
I think you're
sorry. Let me finish. There's no way you can answer to what I'm saying unless you listen to me, unless you tell me to shut up.
All right, okay, proceed.
There's no way. In a debate, you can't answer
Maybe
me.
He just wants to top up
Actually,
to the argument.
we call it point of. Let me.
No.
No, let's allow him to finish.
This
and then
system,
we'll come back to you.
you can question everything else, please, but don't question the use of technology.
Okay.
Don't use that. Now, the system that there is that there are several levels of hustler fund. There's a basic one that is individual, where they start you with a small amount and you pay within 14 days and they keep increasing your requirement. Right or wrong, I'm just explaining the system, right or wrong. They keep increasing the money that you can borrow.
Yep.
I have registered, and my basic your loan limit. My loan limit is 1,500 shillings. So if I take these 1,500 shillings
and you pay
and I pay within 14 days, that limit will keep growing. So which means they are trying to build what we call credit scoring, or whatever you call it, so that as you borrow and pay, your credit limit goes up. And allow me to use my personal experience. My daughter went to Canada and was in school. We made one big mistake. For 4 years when she was in the university, she used cash. Debit cards. She finished university and she gets a job. She couldn't get housing. Why? She had no credit score. We struggled for 1 year to ensure that she gets a credit score so that she could even rent a house, which means we are progressing in that direction where your credit rating matters. Now, if you don't want to do individual, you join together. Now, for individuals, the money moves from 500 shillings to 50,000, Bob. If you form a circle, a group, then you go through the rigmarole of registering and all that, then your money that you can borrow is up to 10 million shillings, which means it provides for individuals as well as the whatever.
Groups.
So let's not throw the baby with the bathwater.
But that one is not really clear to the people of Kenya, and perhaps
it's been the public domain.
And yes, of course,
public domain.
And that is why perhaps they need to work in their communication or on their communication.
I think I totally agree with him, but there's one place where I fault him. He's talking.
No, we're coming to you.
He's talking about how he can be able to use technology. I remember when he went to open his account in Equity, he physically presented himself.
Yes.
I'm sure a photograph was asked.
Yeah.
I think his signature and copies of his ID. And I'm sure he filled something. Then he was given an option. Would you want to receive messages on your phone through email?
Right.
Would you want to do mobile? then he was told you can install the application. I think that happened to him.
And so you think that would have been necessary for a start?
Let me tell you, that would be necessary for any lender who is giving money to anybody. That, for me, I believe that.
Yes.
But another important thing, we need to be very sincere. This thing about people talking about credit rating, Tala had it, Mshwari had it. Everybody, whether it's a Mama Mboga who borrowed money from Mshwari, still went through credit rating. Even Tala, people went through credit rating. And the biggest headache of these mobile lenders, which they have always complained about, that they can raise your credit rating up to about, you start, let's say, with 500, you get to 15. The moment you get 20, you disappear. They're not able to get you.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that what mechanism have they put in place that he will borrow 1,000, as you say, that is what he's able to get. By the time he gets 50, I thank God, I'm sure he can be able to pay that 50. But there's somebody, once his credit rating reaches to 50, you'd rather lose that SIM card and disappear.
And that has happened.
And that has happened. That has been the biggest problem with mobile money. So I don't know how that has been healed.
They say that you can't run away from the government.
Well, first and foremost, we need to understand something. Let's take a history trip. You know, this is an affirmative action. And this started way back in Kibaka's government. You know, he's the one who first came up with these affirmative actions. Under him, there was the Women Enterprise Fund, there was the Youth Fund. Under the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, we had the Uwezo and Bishara Fund. Now, these funds had issues, challenges. How they maneuver those challenges will make or break this hustler fund, because now it is the biggest affirmative action at 50 billion. Now you get to see there were disputes with the banks under the other funds. How this resolves that is an issue. There was the issue of repayment, for example, where before you were loaned, they depended on me paying my loan so that they actually give out loans. Now when you come to this other one, this is why they're using the M-Pesa and everything. It's technology, so it's trying to capture you so that you don't run away from paying your loan. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, because when you ask people the reason for that fund, some are taking that fund because, one, they don't have anything to eat. You saw the many examples. I didn't have food, I took the money. They don't have jobs. So you ask yourself, once it's time for repayment, where do you get the money from? There's a lot of misinformation. There's an issue also on savings. There's a long-term saving, 70% goes to long-term saving. 30% goes to short-term savings. So you have to tell them where the savings is going to be. Because they ask, when someone nilichukua 600, but I got 500 and something. Where's this other money? You realize they need to understand what are long-term, what are short-term savings. So there's a lot of public information that is still lacking. And then also you have to take them through the issue of default. They have to understand, because days before the 14 days are over, you get a notification. After the notification, you know, the interest is 8% per annum, 0.02 per day. Now, if you don't pay your loan, for example, 15 days after default, it changes from 8% to 9.5% per annum. Exactly. All right? And then 30 days of default, your account is frozen. All right? Your credit score is lowered. Okay? And then the government later will institute recovery measures. Question is, what are recovery measures?
How different
and then lastly, a 10 million fine. And then an imprisonment not exceeding 5 years. Do you see how punitive that is? For someone who took 20,000 or 500 because they didn't have food. They didn't understand the repercussions of what they are getting themselves into. That is what needs to be said out there. When the president was campaigning, he talked about money without interest. When he got into office, he said, hakuna pesa ya bure. Culture shock number one. So a lot of debunking, a lot of misinformation is out there. And I am pretty sure what I just stated here as default measures, most don't know.
But now who's duty is it to get to understand some of these things? Because like you rightfully say, you have stated that because this information is in the public domain. And so what will it take for the public to understand this? How far does the government require to go to make sure that people get to understand this? If you have the knowledge to go to, star 254 or star whatever, and you get to acquire this amount of money, why don't you do your due diligence? Why don't you do your assignment to understand what you're getting yourself into? Who is supposed to go out there and constantly tell the people what to expect?
Now you see, the problem is first and foremost.
Sorry, I don't know. It's
budding.
Because number one, our full concern was that there is no recourse for people who don't pay. He's explained.
Yes.
Number two, the interest rate, and I hear Rodin say it very loudly, that is 9.5%. As if, as you know, is a mountain.
Okay.
If you walk to any bank today, if you get less than 15%, you'll be the luckiest person. So really, they're giving
the interest rates.
They are giving you money
that is
6% below the interest rate. In fact, it's only, there's a CBK-based lending now is 8.75. So banks do a minimum of 4 for long-term loans and do 10 depending on the loading that they do for your ability to pay. So the loading here is only 0.75%. It's per annum. The 9.5 is per annum.
Yes.
And the idea is within 14 days, you should be able to do, because what's the purpose of the Hustler Fund? And this is not talking on behalf of them, it's just looking at the technical point. What's the purpose? Is to give the people on the lower pyramids, lower on the base of the pyramid, an ability to be able to get some funds to be able to run their business. People seated on this desk cannot think how you can do business 1,500. About 13 million Kenyans do that on a daily basis. That's why Fuliza lends 3 trillion shillings a year. 3 trillion shillings a year at an interest rate of about 1,000 per annum. 1,000% per annum. So that you give the base funds to be able to do their business. Guys here, don't struggle, and please don't question those people, because they are able to use that 1,500 to do business for a day. You can't, because that's your lunch. Now, it means that at 14 days, if you don't pay, then you're punished more. How do you get this information? It's available in the terms and conditions given to everyone who applies. It's on WhatsApp. It's on SMS. Yeah. You can check.
Get a link
if you're interested. Number 3, we are seated here looking at Kenyans are people who don't think that I'm actually borrowing money. Kenyans know. The hustlers out there know that this is money borrowed, because it's not the first time they are borrowing. They are borrowed from Fuliza, they are borrowing from Tala, they are borrowing from whatever, they have borrowed. Now, this mechanism of 14 days, increase the rate, half an hour, freeze the account, means that when somebody wants to borrow 1,000 today, 5,000 tomorrow, as the credit rating goes up and he pays back, there's a point at which he cannot be able to borrow if he's not paying it back, his money.
Yeah, there's something that really confuses us. The definition of an hustler.
Because this is now open to everybody.
Because he is an hustler if he can be able to access. And we're talking.
No, I'm not a hustler. No. I was testing the system.
That's what I'm saying.
I will not borrow.
Listen.
Sorry, I just have to clear that.
Yes.
I'm not. I was not doing this to borrow. I was doing it to test the system, because I never want to talk about something that I don't know.
But the next question is, if you borrow, will you get?
You will.
You will get.
Yes, I will.
So that's where that's where we have a problem. Is that this system is open to anybody. And so the question of somebody can be able to use 500 to do business, others cannot. Even street kids are borrowing. We're using the same system. Yeah. So there are people also who are getting hold of this money and they cannot pay. But there are also people who, as they put it rightfully, like the deputy president, who his credit rating was 1,000 and something.
And I think it is almost standard for.
But it doesn't mean. But remember the question. It doesn't mean if he wants to borrow, you won't get.
You won't get.
You will get that. That is his rating.
So it really, there's no clear line.
So who is a hustler in this case? Yeah. That it means across the country, there are many people borrowing. There are those who will return within a week, within a day. In fact, they'll borrow today and repay tomorrow. But there are those people who will not even repay. at all.
There'll be lots of
and then therefore these measures that are recovery measures that are put in place will haunt them.
Yeah.
I can imagine street families borrowing this money just because they have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
When will they pay it back? And they are not doing business. They are surviving.
Okay.
The money they are looking for is for survival.
Okay.
It's not to buy anything and do any business. They want money. So that's where...
And that's the biggest question. How then does the government inculcate the aspect of discipline such that for the purpose that it was intended.
Who qualifies?
And I mean, even if everybody qualifies and they're able to take this money for business purposes, for the growth of that, fund arrangement,
and that's
I think it's a good thing.
That's why I talked about the youth fund. Although, of course, we know there's
they also have their fair share of loans,
women enterprise fund. There is the management which had a problem, and it happens everywhere. But the process of qualifying who can be able to borrow. What measures do you put in place that the person who borrows cannot default? You are told produce like 2 guarantors. Show cost you can be able to pay. But when you tell people that you can go to your mobile phone anywhere in Kirinyaga Street, you live on you're a street family, you get the money, and then I tell you, pay me back that money, yet you're looking for survival. It's difficult.
Are we thinking so much about this? Is it a gamble as it appears? And perhaps we should just let ourselves see whether it works.
This is free money. Celebrate people.
You see, the reason why I started by giving the history about affirmative funds, so that people get to understand that the funds that came before this had their fair share of challenges. Yeah. Now, how this fund maneuvers those challenges will determine its success or failure. Because there are issues, one, on no legislation on this fund. What we only have are regulations from the CS Treasury, all right? The issues of no legislation, for example. So you get to understand that, and then a lot of misinformation, like I rightfully said. He talked about when you're seeking the loan, the terms and conditions. We can do an experiment with you today. We walk out here, people are downloading an app that you and I have come up with. I will tell you for sure, they will never read the terms and conditions, but they'll accept. And you can check. 3/4 of people don't read the terms and conditions. Maybe those who understand that I am binding myself and my data and everything. That's why people are saying, why do you need my M-Pesa? But it isn't terms and conditions. You realize? So at the end of the day, that's why I'm saying there's a lot of misinformation. And there's a lot that needs to be done. People get to understand. The problem is, this fund, we have to take it as a move from what it's meant to be and then turn into Fuliza. Where you get to a point where you are out with your friends, you don't have money to pay the bill, you Fuliza it. Courtesy of a hustler fund. Because at the end of the day, we need people to understand what is the reason for this fund. It's not about who qualifies or who doesn't qualify. For me, people need to understand what does this fund mean, and then what are the repercussions of not paying this fund, for example. Because from many of those who have taken, they'll tell you, my life is hard, I don't have food, I don't have ABCD. So I took this, and they don't have a job. I didn't have fare, I don't have a job. And there was one who was being shown in one of your sister media houses, was saying, I didn't have food. So I took the money home, they bought flour, ingine nimetumia fare. So that person doesn't have a job. 14 days has to start paying, after 14 days. So you tell that person to the default mechanisms, they'll be shocked. So at the end of the day, I believe we need to have a holistic conversation around it. It is a good fund. Let's start from there. It is a good fund, and it will change the lives of many. But at the same time, Kenyans need to understand what they're getting themselves into. Because we can't say we put it in a terms and condition and that's that.
The truth of the matter, it is a social welfare.
Can we take a quick short break and then come so we get ample time to...
The truth of the matter...
I just want to make one statement.
The truth of the matter, this is a social welfare fund. Take it, don't pay.
One statement?
It's a very unfortunate statement on national TV to say that. Very, very unfortunate. 3 trillion shillings are borrowed every day by Kenyans and they pay back. You notice that we had about 3 or 4 million of them on the CRB because of very funny money. And all of them, by the way, is not Fuliza. I was in CRB because I had a credit card for 10 years and I did not pay 1 shilling and 20 cents. I was put on CRB. So even when you look at the 4 million, it's not necessarily because of Fuliza. 3 trillion shillings a year is borrowed and paid back by Kenyans under that program that charge them over 1,000%. Number 2, this conversation reminds me of 2004. Sometimes we went to social media, went to whatever. When Equity Bank came in and was registered as a bank, they looked at the profile of the banking, and you needed almost your grandmother's certificate to have an account open for you. You know the system that was being explained earlier? You needed guarantors, you need, I don't know, whatever. You just open an account. Equity Bank said, why do I need to do that? You needed 5,000 shillings minimum for Standard Bank. You needed 10,000 shillings to open a Barclays account. Equity comes in the pitch and says, you don't need a single shilling. Walk in, fill up a form, don't even come with a photo, because they used to demand you come with 2 colored photographs with your guarantors and all that. You walk into the banking hall, they had a camera. They took your picture, you fill up a form, and you walked out with an account number. I'll tell you the process for Standard Bank. You went in, fill up a form, send your guarantor, send your whatever else. You get recommended by another customer, and waited for a week for them to communicate with you on email, because emails are not very common, on postal letter saying that your account now has been opened and your account number is this. You walked out. We all shouted how Equity Bank would collapse. Because you walked in, opened with zero money. Yes. You went with zero money and you opened an account. You walked out with our account. And people started banking. Yeah. And today is the largest bank in Kenya. So let's give this a chance. Let's give it a chance and see how it works.
Those who are not able to pay, those who are not those who are not able to pay, let them not be subjected to any kind of roughness.
You are watching How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji, kuna comedians, alafu kuna wajinga,
and music bands every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates. Baraza la Siasa.
Hiyo kitu azungumzie, angalie hali ya maisha ya watu.
Informative health discussions. Business, farming. Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs,
waimbaji.
By the masses out there, that the opposers are going to use this and take advantage, and perhaps, this, would be a lie, if it is a lie according to government, that will be trolled severally to a point where people will believe and will not have confidence in this fund?
I think one of the most important things we need to realize is that both the political divide, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, talked and hyped so much about a social welfare system. Raila talked about 6,000. Kenya Kwanza came with an system that they said it's about a hustler fund. So they need to debunk that and ensure that all these government want to help the poor. And that's, I think, was in their mind. When they actually talked about the hustlers, they talked about people who try to hack their lives from every day, whatever comes across them. So once this is understood by people that Kenya Kwanza, yes, they're in government, they're in power, they have a proper plan for the poor, they have a social welfare system that to them will work. It's better than Azimio one. Then Kenyans need to understand that when you get this fund from the so-called hustler fund, those measures that are put to punish you when you don't pay should actually be flexible. You see, because now, and he has put it across that if you are a street family and you get 500 and you're able to have a meal, and tomorrow you don't get that money and somebody tells you look for that money to pay back, it's almost impossible. So I think we need to appreciate that. I think as we democratically develop, the idea of social democracy and social welfare system are going to be part of our culture. So that the president, with his good heart as a Christian and with somebody who loves people, that this money is helping those people, especially most of them who voted for him, in a proper social welfare system, so that we don't have to just waste our time all the time talking about that if you don't pay back 500 shillings, there are measures that you'll be punished and you can even end up in prison. That's the thing, we need to demystify that. I think this money is for those who can be able to pay. Those who cannot be able to pay, let them have an recourse. Wow. So that, yeah.
Interesting. And Engineer, it is today that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is bound to make good his threat. And I don't know whether it's a threat or really is a course that you expect from Kenyans who understand governance, Kenyans who understand how governments should be run, and a course towards making sure that really he keeps the government in check. Just how instrumental will this be for him as an individual who seeks to get that relevance politically, and for President William Ruto, who as well is challenged, because then you do not want a scenario where there's someone who's always going to make noise so that the government is not able to perform its functions without worry?
Democracy requires that there has to be a government and there has to be an opposition generally. In 2010, we gave ourselves a constitution that did not provide for an opposition, but provided for majority and minority in parliament. And as soon as one election is done, as a country, we know that the campaign for the next election starts. So what we are seeing today in Kamukunji is really beginning of the campaign for 2027. And of course, one of the things that you do is to create ills of the government that is in place, so that you can have the masses on your side.
Yeah.
So yes, 100% Raila Odinga is going out there to seek relevance again in terms of being the kingpin of the opposition. Yeah. Because remember, the last 5 years, he was part of the regime that was there. So he wasn't really in the opposition. He was with the government, in the government. And this is an opportunity now to be able to start creating that euphoria of me being the kingpin of opposition in this country. And of course, in that meeting, what I expect is that they will pick up, whoever will be speaking, will pick up issues that they see they question about the government, the GMO situation, the hustler fund, anything that you can use, that you can throw mud at the government, so that you can create that. And to a bigger extent, unless it becomes violence, becomes demonstrations that are violent, is a good thing for the nation, because it becomes a process in which someone questions what the government is doing, so that the government can sit back and go back and be able to do either improve or do better. I'm reminded of, we used to have a lot of demonstration in Nairobi University from time immemorial when the university was started. And one time, Professor William Mbithi was a vice chancellor. I don't know whether Wafula would remember. And one day students said that they are going to have a demonstration in Nairobi. And this guy, Professor Mbithi, was very kind and said, there's no problem. If we have an issue, let's go demonstrate. I'm also part of the University of Nairobi, so I should be part of that. And guess what he did? He took his young daughter and he led the demonstration. And what happened is that they went around Nairobi, of course, were given security, and it was the most peaceful demonstration that Nairobi has ever had since that time. The point is, a meeting like that would rally together his troops after the election on the 9th and be able to tell them what he thinks now, or what they think as a group as to what needs to be done. So much as a government in waiting, and you expect critical. If they go to Kamukunji and do the meeting like has been promised, perfect for democracy. There's nothing wrong. It's ingrained in our constitution. There's nobody who says against it. And I'm happy that the government is not bringing the people that are responsible in the government, both the president, the deputy president, as well as the minister for interior. None of them has come to castigate it. They have said we'll support it, but please give us a schedule. Because for me, the reason why the law requires you to inform the police is not to ask for their permission. It's so that they are aware, so they can, if there is a need for security, to be able to give you security. So it's the beginning of the campaign for 2027, is getting relevance for Raila Odinga again as a kingpin of opposition in this country, which he lost in the last government dispensation. And let's see how it pans out.
And this is Raila in his best elements, so to speak. You can say that it's constitutional, you can say that it's good for democracy, but I can tell you for free, a government that is, in action, a government that is of the day, has to get worried of such or over such, because you can't just sit pretty and look at Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the way at some point in time he's managed to frustrate previous governments and say that, well, this one he does not go anywhere with.
When you started the show today, you showed how he had handshakes with Moi, Kibaki, and Uhuru. Now, this is, Raila has many names, Jacob, Baba, whatever. Now, the Raila we are going to see today is now the Raila called Enigma, meaning he's rebranding himself.
Is he?
He is rebranding. You see, Raila is a political animal, and he knows when to change, because in this election that just ended, there were many tags put on him by the current president. They called him a state project. And in his career as a politician, he has always been seen as a savior for the downtrodden. And now the current president took that tag, the chief hustler, the hustler's clerk. And so those who are at the bottom, as they are usually called, saw him as a sign of hope. And so Raila is rebranding himself, rebranding his politics. And that is why it starts with today, Kamukunji, which is more or less a stocktake. Because you remember, he has said that it is a consultation, not a demonstration. And by the way, whatever he's doing is right under Article 37 of the Constitution. That is to assemble, to demonstrate, and picket. But the key word in that sentence is peaceably. Peace is what is needed. Now, will we see something different? We wait to see. Because it is more or less like a stocktake after the elections. Because remember, there are those who voted for him, and he's one of the, I think he's the only politician who has suicidal supporters. In that, there's even a joke that he's the only one who doesn't pay for a crowd. He just shows up and the crowd will walk with him, Baba left, right. So at the end of the day, there are those who feel that after the elections, he never told them, he never said anything. So they expect, because he said today he'll tell them how his victory was taken away. So they expect to hear how that happened. He expects to give them hope. As he rightfully said, win an election to plan for an election. Because in Kenya, mapema ni best. You realize? And that is why we have a president. Yes, and that is why we have a president who's got into office. Now, do I believe whatever he's doing is good? I actually believe so. Because we had lost this Raila in the handshake. He was there, but in a bit not the same. Because at the end of the day, any government that has a vibrant Raila is on toes. Because now, you can remember, when the GMO issue was out there, he talked about public participation. They ended up doing it. When he talked about the increase of tax, public participation, they ended up doing it. Because you see, he has been seen as a voice for those who are voiceless. And when he's out of that scene, there was a joke when during the handshake, they were saying Raila is nowhere, so we are facing a lot of hardships. So I believe today he's going to align his troops, and also I think he's going to see those who are aligned to him, because you see after elections, the interests are different. We've been hearing statements, people saying, even we had, I don't know how true that was, the former governor of Kakamega who was saying, apparently there was some news that he's left, then he was seen the next day with him. So, you know, today it's more or less about his troops. And then he's going to chart a way forward. Because at the end of the day, we're also told that he'll have a separate Jamhuri Day celebration on the 12th. So this might be a precursor for that. To see, so what do I have here? What do we change? All right? And that is why I was talking about misinformation. You talked about the Hustler Fund. Misinformation is a tool for the politicians. Propaganda can easily win in it. Because people can tell you, oh, you know, by the way, the M-Pesa PIN they're asking you for, this is like Okwa Jahazi. When you load your credit, it is taken if you don't want to pay. So that is why we need to be very careful with misinformation, because a politician likes misinformation. It is the easiest tool to use, because propaganda is more or less part of our politics. So we wait to see what he's going to do today. And I can tell you for sure, he's inviting the president to a contest. That is a contest.
Right.
Is
it a contest or inviting the president for, you know, consideration of a handshake, as many would say?
You know, he expects, you know him, he lacks the roughness. So if, for example, they decide to, let's say, tear gas them, that is playing into his card, into his game. Okay. And he'll go home clapping, saying, you have brought yourself into the box. So at the end of the day, it might be a trap or not. We wait to see. Like I told you, he calls himself, or he's called the Enigma for several reasons. So today he's rebranding. So we wait to see the Raila post today moving forward.
Okay. 2027 also, as you weigh in on this, and perhaps is it time that we start having conversations of what people were suggesting? Can we just have a one-term president, 10 years they go and get out of the space? Because clearly, when they say Mapema is best, and then you come on board, and before you've even started delivering to the people of Kenya, you're thinking 2027, you're thinking years to come, it gets us worried, because Mapema is best at the expense of war.
I think I need to weigh in on what my colleagues have just talked about.
Yes.
I think one thing we need to accept and come to reality with is that our democracy is it's very weak. And one of the things why Raila is where he is now is not, and we should really not be laboring so much and talking about Raila. We need to talk about our democracy. Last week we were discussing with people and we were saying, look, for example, in a country where you have 22 million registered voters and 6.9 voted the so-called opposition, and 7.1 voted for the so-called, of course, the president. And then you have 8 million Kenyans who did not vote.
Yeah.
Who do you blame? Do you blame the opposition? And this is this culture of having or producing unpopular presidents. Unpopular presidents.
How unpopular? All right.
Because let me just put it in perspective. Yes. I'm expecting to see us going into an election with a margin of error of like 1 million Kenyans did not vote. But whose mandate, whose duty is it for Kenyans to participate in elections? I'm sure people talk about countries where when you don't vote, there's penalty, there's punishment, or there's something they impose on you when you don't vote. We need to look at that. We need to produce presidents who feel, and that's why the question, the so-called of issues of handshake, because where else the president is elected according to the constitution and derives the legality to be the president, the question of legitimacy still hangs out here. And that is what we need to be healing. We need to be asking ourselves, if you take 8 million Kenyans who did not vote, plus 6.9 who voted for Raila, we are talking about almost 16 million people who did not vote for the president. And we are talking about 7.1 who voted for the president. So what do we do after that? You reach to the aisle. And you are able to do it. And we've seen our president doing that, but through other unconstitutional means, by trying to bring people from Azimio and co-opting them into his government. He understands. He's not the
importance of having.
He understands the importance of having a popular presidency, a presidency that cuts across the country, But we need to heal that. So, and it's really absurd to see the onslaught on the IEBC as if it is about the individuals, but not the institution.
Yeah.
And I would expect our leaders today to be talking about how they will reform the election law to ensure that any president elected must actually be a popular president. Yeah. Instead of trying to say, okay, we are going after the 4. And I think these are the issues that are making Raila and the other people to come. And I will tell you for sure, and this is just hypothetically, if President Ruto had been elected by 15 million Kenyans, and somebody was joking the other day, if Wajakoyo would call for protest today, would it be the same as what Raila is calling?
Right.
So we need to really understand that margin. When you are leading with 200,000 votes, does it make you feel that you need to reach to the other side and see how do we drive our country together, irrespective of the terms people use as a handshake? And that's where we need to start healing our democracy. That issue that is very critical is that the lawyers just said that under our constitution, Article 37 allows the Raila. Remember, after Moi, I think it's only after Moi that opposition seemed to have completely died. Because we remember the knack between Raila and Kibaki, then Uhuru and Ruto, and now Ruto and Gachagua.
Right.
But what is interesting in our politics that you remember that both these regimes have always succeeded in the first term, working together. The second term, they have always gone opposite direction.
Right.
And we're yet to see. So I think we need to be very honest ourselves when we castigate the opposition. And I think we need to strengthen the opposition to the point whereby it can find a way of working with government. Look at the UK, for example. I think in a span of about 3 or 4 years, they have had how many prime ministers?
Yeah.
And you can never feel like there's tension in the country. But in Kenya, you cannot even imagine that when the opposition reaches the Hill, it is handshake.
You know, Alex Murthy tells us that it is time that we start thinking of our own homegrown solutions as opposed to comparing ourselves to others. But that aside, now
100%.
that the president has given a go-ahead to the Kenya Kwanza team to as well, you know, engage in this conversation of us getting an opposition office, you know, a proper leader, you know, you have been funded, you are somewhere. Is that also a nice way of saying this is a handshake or toning down the possibilities of a tough Raila Odinga in the next about 4 years?
I know the lawyer in the House had said that that this is really an issue of handshake. It's happened with Moi, with the UDA, it happened with Kibaki in 2007, it happened with Uhuru in 2017. So obviously when you have had 3-4 opportunities to be part of the government, even if you're not elected, obviously an opportunity. And yes, it's true, it's a fact that is in the media today that actually His Excellency President William Ruto has actually called his troops together and say, look, why don't we go to Parliament and change the constitution so that you can allow an office of the opposition leader?
Yeah.
And that, in a way, is a kind of handshake so that you don't float in the dark. But I just want to demystify this discussion about democracy, because democracy is about the majority winning and the minority having their way. Democracy has nothing to do with everybody voting. United States, hardly 60% of the people vote. Yet, we don't have this kind of shenanigans. The fact is that someone won. If they won rightly, it could even be with 1 vote. What is supposed to happen is that the person who lost is supposed to be in the minority. So he steps back and keeps watch on the one who won. So that, to ensure, because both of them has the interest of the country at heart. That's the assumption.
And that's why it's the 50 plus 1.
50 plus 1, yeah. Both of you have interest of the country. It doesn't matter how many votes. 9 million, 8 million. 8 million did not vote. They chose not to vote. Nobody told them not to vote. So you can't consider that as an issue of legitimacy of a government.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world. Show me one country where that question the legitimacy of the government. So the point is, if you get 50% plus 1 vote, you've won. If you won, you form government. If you lost, then you become the government in waiting, or the government that checks on that. Our constitution removed that. in terms of having an opposition office. But even today, you become a strong minority in parliament, so that when the Cherera 4 are brought into parliament, you bring in facts to be able to counter what the government is saying against them, as opposed to bringing shenanigans and tales in the evenings in parliament, accusing the government of doing ABCD. They're saying they did ABCD. What's your response to that as a minority, as the opposition? And that's what is envisaged in democracy. In this case, Raila goes to Kamukunji. Perfect. Allowed by the constitution that we, the people of Kenya, formed. We, the people of Kenya, allowed that to happen. And there is nothing wrong. The only challenge would be in case it becomes violent. But then in the constitution, we've allowed the police to take charge of that. So they'll take charge of that. And today, that's what I've said, this meeting today is perfect. He comes in, and of course, it's the first meeting after the election. So obviously, in a way, is kind of, if you ask me, it would be a meeting to tell the troops, his troops, because they are there, as to where do we go for the next 5 years? How do we ensure that in the next one, we win, and we win big?
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Gentlemen, we have to close. And so I'll allow you, say, 30 seconds of 1 minute to just give us your parting shots. You know, a very good note to wind it up on as we wait to see what the Right Honorable Raila Odinga then does today, and whether then he metamorphosizes to a better politician, or, you know, looking at history, looking at Kiza Besigye, looking at Morgan Changirai, may his soul rest in eternal peace, it will be a different thing.
Well, that is true, because they have all tried, and we all see what happened. But at the end of the day, I believe today Kamukunji will be interesting for different reasons. We wait to, like I said, he's rebranding, that is for sure. We wait to see what becomes of him post today, and what he actually tells his supporters, because he said he'll give the details as to how his victory was taken away, as he puts it. So we wait for that, and I believe we really need a strong opposition in this country, a strong one, actually to put the government in check, but also issues of oversight. You see, I've always had a problem with our parliament, and I was hopeful this would be different, but from the pronouncements I'm seeing from their party leaders and everything, it's still the same old. It's a conveyor belt, because now we saw those who are in government being told not to criticize the same government. So what happens to your oversight role? Yeah. In as much as the president comes from your coalition, you still have oversight. So if you take away your oversight, then you're a conveyor belt. So I really hope and pray that we'll actually have leaders who will bring forward people-centric bills and issues and policies, so that we move forward. And as I rightfully said, Mpemani best, and the campaign is on. Yeah. He has invited them to a contest. How they take it up is upon them. And we wait to see what happens moving forward.
Oswago was sentenced yesterday. It was the day before yesterday, and you know, you almost speak of the IEBC, and you just want to understand how we can sanitize the election body, but all the same, that is story for another day as we close it.
I think, as my colleagues have also said, is that we are going to see Raila in his true form, the return of opposition politics. I think it's not about a handshake, because you remember, and I said that immediately after Moi left, there was coalition government. Yeah. And this culture of coalition government has actually somehow derailed opposition politics. So I think where Raila is rightful place. I think it's good for the country, without as critical and severe opposition to check the government. I think the government can easily slip into dictatorship. And I think we have already seen signs that if this government is not properly checked, then I think, and we have an opposition like Raila, and of course we have Karua also, and we have many other leaders who are still in opposition and can be able to prove that we will hold the government accountable. I think there will be no violence. Remember, this first meeting is happening in Raila's bedroom. Yeah. So, of course, you expect that it will be a conversation. Okay. And then, of course, there will be the other parallel Jamhuri Day. I think it is important for Kenyans to be allowed to celebrate wherever they want. Okay. I think whether you want to stay at home, whether you want to go anywhere. So
you're at liberty for as long as you're
at liberty. Okay. So we will try to see how many people will go to Nyayo Stadium, and how many will go to Jacaranda. So,
it would be interesting.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. Remember, Raila had 6.9 Kenyans behind him. And Ruto had 7.9 Kenyans behind him.
Maybe they have shifted allegiance.
So we really need to see how we go forward.
Engineer, 30 seconds.
The arraignment in court and the conviction of Oswago is a very big win for this country, because it shows that it doesn't matter how long it takes, justice takes place.
Yeah.
And I just hope that is a precursor to the things that are going to happen, so that when people are in government, they are careful what they do, that they don't get caught when they leave. Because in the past, it's been a case of when you leave, then you're fine. You're fine. On the politics, I want to congratulate the government that with the announcement of the meeting at Kamukunji, it is not like things as usual, like in the past, they will castigate, they will question and do that. The government have actually said, go ahead. We are happy that you are holding this meeting. Just tell us where you are having it. And I just hope they will have the presence of mind, the Raila group, to be able to tell the government where they are going to be. Because the government holds the instruments of protection for the society, so that they know where it's going to be done, if there are any demonstration, if there is any movement, so that they can be able to provide them with this security for them. Yeah. And as we go forward, let's hope that this becomes a good thing. But of course, the biggest issue is this is bottom line, a handshake deal request.
All right. Eventually, we're going to see how it turns out. The president maintains that one is not going to be there. But anyway, we wait to see. Engineer Alex Mwathi, our governance expert, the last speaker this morning, Evans Wafula, political analyst, Asante Sana, gentlemen, as well as Wakili Nordin Kagai. We close it at this very point. We shift gears.